Suttles, Judy Johnson, Pop Lloyd. The list of Hall of Fame Negro Leagues players is impressive. But perhaps the two men whose legend still lives on in our imagination even today are the duo we know simply as Satchel and Josh.
I played with the Baltimore Eli Giants, and we had another catcher in the Negro National League, Josh Gibson. In my opinion, the best hitting catcher I have ever seen.
He was boyish, and he had charisma. You loved to be around him. Opposing players liked him. Pitchers liked him, even though he'd kill a pitcher, you know. He just was a big, lovable kind of a man. People just they congregated around him because he was that good.
How good? The tales of Gibson's prolific home run exploits vary, but he just might have been the greatest slugger of all time, white or black.
I am convinced that if Josh Gibson had been playing in the major leagues, could very easily have broken Babe Ruth's 60 home run record.
The same aura that Gibson brought to the plate, Satchel Paige took to the mound.
I don't know who was the greatest pitcher or who was the greatest ball player, but he was in that category. He is the fastest pitcher. He threw the ball faster than anybody. Nobody threw the ball faster than Satchel Paige.
Satchel was not only the best pitcher of the Negro Leagues, he was really the greatest superstar. Everybody in America knew Satchel, not just people who watch Negro League baseball, but white fans too.
If nothing else, Satchel was probably the most colorful showman in any sport.
Welcome to another edition of Confidently Speaking with DOC. I am your host, David Doc Shirey, author of the book Rare Confidence, Strategies and Inspiration to Strengthen Your Belief that you can achieve anything. Episode number 19 on tap tonight. And man, I've been looking forward to this one. We are talking the legend of Josh Gibson and Negro League baseball and the relationship that it had with the city of Pittsburgh with Josh's great-grandson, Sean, who is also the president of the Josh Gibson Foundation. Before we introduce Sean, I want to remind everybody, this is a participatory program. Please comment, ask questions, share the video to extend the show's reach. Without any further ado, let's get to know Sean Gibson. Sean Gibson is the president of the Josh Gibson Foundation, as well as being the great-grandson of the Negro League legend. The Josh Gibson Foundation believes in the endless possibilities for potential in today's youth by providing academic and athletic programs that foster leadership and scholarship, which are the skills necessary for tomorrow's success, and they are created today. Sean never misses an opportunity to advance the Foundation's mission and to tell the rich history of Negro League baseball. Sean is a proud Pittsburgh public school product and an alumni of Edinboro University, where he played basketball and earned a degree in criminal justice. I am pleased to welcome Sean Gibson to the program. Welcome to the show, Sean Gibson. How are you, my man?
What's up, Dave? Thank you, Doc. I appreciate you having me.
Long time no see. And you know what?
That's a nice intro, man.
You know what? You deserve it. I just want to share with our audience what happened here before the show so everybody knows what a good guy you are. Sean, even though he looks about 17, has a grandson. And Sean committed to doing the show tonight a while back. And, you know, as Little League goes, his grandson had a practice that came up. And Sean was going to try to do the show from the car. And the video wasn't working. And Sean rushed home to do it. And here we are, 7 o'clock, on time and under budget. And I appreciate you making that effort, Sean. I really do. You know, when I think about your great-grandfather and I think about the history of the Negro Leagues, I know it's not just me, but I'm like the biggest sports fan you ever met. I'm also the biggest homer when it comes to Pittsburgh you ever met. And the whole aura of it absolutely fascinates me. And, you know, I was lucky enough, Sean, to attend a couple of those Negro League galas with you. Here's one where we were together with Lou Brock. That's Lou Brock next to me.
Yeah.
That was back in 2009. Of course, there's Sean, who doesn't look a day younger than he does today, next to us. Sean, and then another one, I got a chance to sit with Juan Marichal, have dinner with Juan Marichal. I mean, you know, as long as I kept the bat out of his hands, we were in good shape, you know? Great guy. Sean, tell us a little bit about the foundation, the Josh Gibson Foundation, its origins, its missions, and what it's involved with.
Yeah, so just to give you a wrap, my grandfather, actually Josh Gibson Jr., who actually played in the Negro Leagues, and he's also a Pittsburgh Public School grad, Shinley High, and he actually played the last 2 years with the Homestead Grays, 49 and 50. And his whole perspective was, how can he keep his father's legacy alive? And not just his father, but the other great Negro League baseball players, as well as the two greatest teams here in Pittsburgh, the Homestead Grays and the Pittsburgh Crawfords. So he came up with the Josh Gibson Foundation. That was early in 1990. I graduated from Edinburgh in 1995. And once I graduated from Edinburgh, I started getting involved with the foundation. And once I got involved, I started putting the educational components together, baseball programs, academic programs. So all those things that we've been doing now, we've been blessed. We are in 3 sites right now. We have one in the Hill District at Ammon Rec Center, and we're in 2 Pittsburgh public schools, one at Langley, and the other one is at Pittsburgh Classical Academy. So the main mission for the foundation is basically educating the youth, making sure that these young people have an opportunity to succeed in life. And that's been our mission from day one.
And I tell you what, these young people are lucky that they have a guy like you at the helm of that. And I got to know you a little bit, Sean, a number of years back. And I can tell everybody out there that, you know, there's good people, and then there's Sean Gibson good people, and Sean is another level. I want to show a little clip of your great-grandfather for some folks out there that may not be as familiar as I am, just to kind of get a sense as to who the great Josh Gibson was.
To some who watched the slugger, Josh Gibson may have been the greatest slugger in any baseball league. Gibson was rumored to have hit over 800 home runs between the Negro Leagues and independent ball in a 17-year career. Not only was he a great hitter, but Gibson was a great catcher as well. Hall of Famer Walter Johnson said that Gibson was a better catcher than Hall of Famer Bill Dickey, while Roy Campanella said Gibson was the greatest ball player he ever saw. Unfortunately, the majors never saw Gibson's talent, as 2 months before Jackie Robinson's debut, Gibson died of a stroke at age 35.
Now, to take that even a step further, baseball historians consider Josh to be amongst the very best power hitters and catchers in the history of any league, including Major League Baseball. 1972, Josh became only the second Negro League player to be inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Satchel Paige had been inducted the year before. And, Josh had a 359 lifetime batting average. And he hit over 800 home runs. Now, I know, Sean, back in the day in the Negro Leagues and the independent leagues, statistics were sometimes not as easy to come by as they are today. But share with us, Sean, what made Josh such a prodigious power hitter?
Well, first of all, I would say, like you mentioned, a lot of historians or writers try to discredit not just Josh, but all the other great Negro League baseball players due to their stats. But like I always say, that was not Josh and that was not their choice. Of course, they would have loved to play in the majors. It was just that Kennesaw Landis at the time denied African-American baseball players to play in the majors. So Rube Foster, the mastermind behind the Negro Leagues, created the Negro League. So, yeah, some of these guys played in barnstorming games. They played against semi-pro teams. They played against other great Negro League baseball teams. But as one Negro League baseball player told me, 400 feet, 400 feet, whether it's a minor league ballpark, major league ballpark, he hit home runs everywhere. So it didn't matter who he's playing against. A home run's a home run. So when you talk about the greatness of these players, they're phenomenal. And here we are now celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues. that was founded in 1920, February 13th to be exact, 1920, and they're still being talked about.
No doubt. And Josh played 17 years in both the Negro leagues and the independent leagues. And he passed away of a stroke at the very young age of 35 in 1947. And I was taking a look at his career trajectory, and it looked like to me that Josh was still going strong at the time of his passing. Do you think he had a couple solid years left in him?
We can't say, but I mean, just based off what you just said, based off what he was doing at the time, I'm sure, yes. You look at Satchel Paige, he went to the Indians when he's in his 40s, early 40s, and he dominated, and that's why I always try to compare when people say how great are the Negro League baseball players, I always bring up Satchel Paige. You can imagine if Satchel Paige was playing with the Indians in his prime, how great he would have been as a player. But yeah, Josh still has some time to go. Unfortunately, as we know, he died of a stroke. He had a brain tumor. He died at the age of 35 years old, so he left us very young. And as people try to say, he was born too early. But that you can never decide your death or when you're going to be born. He's just born at the wrong time. But as you mentioned, he's in the Hall of Fame. He's in several Hall of Fames. And for a guy that played in the Negro League and never played in the majors and be the second player inducted to the Hall of Fame, hey, we'll take it.
Now, we're going to talk about Satchel a little bit more in a minute, but you bring up a great point that I want to talk about right now because this is a picture of Jackie Robinson and Larry Doby. Now, Jackie Robinson, he famously broke Major League's color barrier in 1947, but from my research for tonight's show, Sean, I learned that legend has it that a lot of the Negro League players at that time were disheartened that it was Jackie and not Josh that got the first chance at the major leagues, because a lot of them thought Josh was the superior player between the two. And I also read that Larry Doby, who is the Cleveland Indian there, who became the first black player in the American League the year after Jackie broke the color barrier, Larry Doby said, I think that's one of the reasons why Josh died so early is because he was heartbroken. So let me ask you this, Sean. Does your family have a sense of Josh's feeling that he never got a chance to play in the major league?
No. And when you brought that up about the heartbroken piece, we hear that a lot. But it's funny when people say that. And Larry Doby speculated because it's not like me and you are friends, Dave. So it's not like you're at my bedside and I know I'm passing. I say, you know what, Dave? I'm very heartbroken that I didn't get a chance to play in the major leagues. I think people are speculating that, Josh died of a tumor. A broken heart can't kill you.
Right.
But I can understand what you're saying. The thing with Jackie that I always like to talk about is that, yes, Jackie was the first. But Jackie had a lot of pressure on him, Dave. A lot of pressure on him. And the one thing I always talk about is nobody looks at if Jackie would have failed. Okay, let's look at an example. Okay, say if Jackie would have failed. It probably would have set us back another 10 years or plus before they took another black baseball player, because they went back and told Branch Rickey, we told you so. So, Jackie was not just playing for himself. He was playing for he was playing for the African-American race. And that's how the Negro Leagues got diminished, because once Jackie crossed over, he needed that support. And all the African-Americans supported Jackie. And as you mentioned, Larry Doby was second. And then Roy Campanella and Larry Don Newcomb and all those guys went afterwards. So, was Jackie probably the best talent-wise? No. But what Jackie had was, compared to Josh Gibson, who only had a ninth grade education coming out of Pittsburgh Public School out of Allegheny and Conroy, Jackie had the military background. He had the UCLA background. And so when Branch Rickey, I can understand what he was looking for. He wanted somebody to be able to be, not say take orders, but when you're in the armed forces, you have to be that mind frame of being able to take orders and not ever control your anger. So, Jackie deserved it, but I always just like to bring up that scenario. If Jackie would have failed, how long would it set us back?
No doubt about it. Now, I want to bring up something that you and I joked about last week, and it made me chuckle a little bit here. So last week I mentioned on a Facebook post I was excited to have you on, and I said, hey, we've got Josh Gibson, the Black Babe Ruth. And you corrected me and you said, no, Dave, Babe Ruth was the white Josh Gibson. And I got a chuckle out of that. And you know what? Here's a picture, a fictitious picture of the two of them at Yankee Stadium. I don't know that they ever met or how much their careers, they crossed. But I wanted you to kind of give us a sense of a comparison on styles between the two prodigious, legendary sluggers.
Yeah. So that painting you said, we created that painting. The last one with Josh. So Babe Ruth's great grandson's name is Brent Stevens. Good friend of mine. And we came up with a program based on diversity. And it was that picture of Josh and that picture of Babe. And a guy, rest in peace, Bill Purdom, did the painting for us. He has now passed away. And so, as you mentioned the comment about Josh being the Black Babe Ruth. We hear that all the time. You know what I mean? It's just we like to reverse it and say, well, you know what? Why not call Babe the white Josh Gibson? And so for us, we feel like Babe and Josh are always compared to each other. And it's always based on their home run greatness. You know, they, like you mentioned, they never played against each other. I don't even know if they ever met. You know what I mean? But I think people recognize talent from a white baseball player, which is Babe Ruth, and they recognize talent from a Black baseball player, which is Josh. They both hitting home runs. You know, they somewhat stature. Josh a little bit muscular, and they compared them, but they never had a chance to play against each other. But it's always good to talk about. Let's put it like this: if we're compared to Babe Ruth, that's something. You know, what I mean? That's how I look at it.
No doubt about it. All right, let's talk about our beloved city of Pittsburgh and the relationship of the Negro Leagues with Pittsburgh. So for people who are not aware, Josh Gibson played for both of our hometown teams, the Homestead Grays as well as the Pittsburgh Crawfords. And for a period of time, Josh, in the 1930s and the 40s, Pittsburgh was really the epicenter of the Negro Leagues, was it not?
Oh man, we, like you mentioned, we're the two of the greatest teams, not just in the Negro Leagues, in baseball, period. You're talking about the Homestead Grays who won 9 pennants in a row. You're talking about the 1935-1936 Crawford team that had 5 Hall of Famers on that team: Satchel Paige, Oscar Charleston, Cool Papa Bell, Judy Johnson, and of course Josh Gibson. So when you talk about the greatness of Negro Leagues, this is it right here in our own city. And I will say this, Doc, the city has definitely embraced the Negro Leagues here. I mean, when you go around, as you see, you know, down what Lamar has done, the painting of Josh Gibson with the Pirates. You go across the Homestead Grays Bridge. We got Josh Gibson Field in the Hill District. You got Josh Gibson markers everywhere. And so the city has definitely embraced the Negro Leagues tradition here, and we love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I wanted to talk a little bit more about that 1935 team because when I was preparing for this show, I came across a number of articles that talked about how, you know, any baseball fan always hears about the 27 Yankees and Murderers Row and the greatest team of all time. But there's a lot of people who think that 1935 Crawford's team was right up there with that 27 Yankee team.
Listen, you can't deny that Crawford team. I mean, you got, like I said, you have 5 Hall of Famers on that team. That's the first time. Well, that was the first time that Josh and Satch played together on the Negro League. Now they played together over in the Latin countries, but I mean, first of all, you got the two of the best players in the Negro League on the same team. One's a pitcher, one's a catcher, and then you got Judy Johnson, you got Oscar Charleston. I mean, these are great Hall of Famers. So yeah, when you talk about baseball great, that's why when I always talk about the Negro Leagues, I never try to make them great just for the Negro Leagues. I feel like they're great baseball, period, not just the Negro Leagues.
Now, I think I read a comment. I'm not sure if it was from you or not. It may have been from you, Sean, that said, now just imagine had the Pittsburgh Pirates signed some of these players that were right under their nose at the time.
Yeah, so there was a telegram by Chester Washington, who sent the telegram from the Courier, who worked for the Courier, sent the telegram to the Pirates. At that time, Pirate Trainer was the manager. And basically, the telegram said, hey, listen, we know your team is not that great. You have two of the greatest teams right here in Pittsburgh. Just take some of the talent from those teams and make Pittsburgh a dynasty. But of course, you know, Kennesaw Landis was the commissioner then, And, you know, he was a former judge, and he put the hammer down on everybody, and they didn't take that chance. So Pittsburgh could have been, way before Jackie Robinson broke the caliber, Pittsburgh could have been a dynasty back then.
No doubt. Now, I want to talk a little bit about a guy I know you know about, but even Pittsburgh sports fans don't know enough about this guy, and this is Gus Greenlee. Now, for those out there who have no idea who Gus Greenlee is, he was the owner of the Pittsburgh Crawfords. He was kind of, and you tell me if this is not a fair comparison, he was kind of a George Steinbrenner type at the time, where he was a successful businessman, and he was willing to pay to go out and bring in top talent. He owned the famous Crawford Grill in the Hill District. That was part of the lore of the Crawford's name, that some of the best jazz musicians in American history played at his grill. What can you tell us about Gus Greenlee?
Legendary. I mean, you're talking about a man who's before his time. You know, we all know how Gus Greenlee made his money. Yes, he ran the numbers, as what we call the data lottery. But the one thing I would say about Gus Greenlee, he was very generous with his money. He would lend out money, give money to people who needed money. You know what I mean? So he was very generous with his money. The one thing you forgot to mention, though, is that he built his own stadium in the Hill District.
Well, because that was coming next.
Okay. And it had lights. So he was way before his time. And as you mentioned, he did not care about money. He reminds me of Mark Cuban. That's who he reminds me of, because Mark Cuban will pay to get his team to win it.
Right.
And for him to have Satchel Paige and the 5 Hall of Famers, he probably paid a good penny, but it worked out for him. So when you talk about Gus Green, like as you mentioned, who everybody knows the famous Crawford Grill. It's not just known for baseball, but it was one of the, you know, back then the Hill was like the Little Harlem, they called it. You know what I mean? Right. And where all the jazz musicians, the famous actors, everybody that came to Pittsburgh to perform, all went to the Crawford Grill. So you can just imagine just coming as Josh Gibson and all the other guys, Satchel Paige, you got Dizzy Gillespie, you got Lena Horne, you got all these famous people in the Crawford Grill. And there's one little small box. You didn't know how small it was, but the man behind it was Big Red, Gus Greenlee.
Now I want to talk about, it's funny you mentioned it. I forgot to mention it. I was saving that for its own segment here, because Gus Greenlee, most Pittsburghers are not aware of this, but he built a field in the Hill District called Greenlee Field. Now the Crawfords played there, but the Homestead Grays briefly played there. Your Pittsburgh Steelers actually practiced there during the mid-1930s, and it was actually the first black-owned, built, and owned ballpark in America at the time. And, you know, that really leads me into the next question, Josh, because so much injustice surrounding what happened with Negro League players that weren't allowed to play. And thank God for guys like you that are telling this story. But even in a sports town like Pittsburgh, you know, we love our Steelers, our Penguins, our Pirates. But I guarantee I'm the biggest sports fan you know, Josh. And when I tell you that if you walk down the street and ask 100 people, there's not 2 of them that would tell you they know anything about Greenlee Field. Now, a lot of them will know about Josh Gibson, but not enough of them will know about it. And you think about our sports town and our history, and a lot of our legends are African Americans. But Josh, because he played in the Negro Leagues, for whatever reason, is not mentioned nearly as often as those other guys.
No, it's not. But, you know, it's funny because was last year, Pittsburgh Magazine did the top 100 greatest athletes of all Pittsburghers, not athletes, Pittsburghers of all time. And Josh is number 7. He was hired that the highest before him, African-American, was August Wilson. So that tells you about Pittsburgh history. Just recently, Kevin Gorman did an article of the players who were number 20. And Pie Trainer had 20, but the Trib picked Josh Gibson as the top athlete that were number 20 in the city. So I think Pittsburghers get it, you know what I mean? And that's why we have the Josh Gibson Foundation to educate everybody else. But the main thing is that, like you said, me come on your show, Doc, you have these interviews, us educating the people about the Negro Leagues and the great tradition here in Pittsburgh. That's how we carry his legacy. That's how this legacy is carried on, for us having these conversations and people listening.
Now, I've had the opportunity back when I worked for an organization that you were involved with as well, Sean, to go to a number of those Negro League galas And those were just so much fun. I mean, when I tell you, I had to go to a lot of black tie functions, and the majority of them were like you had to wait for the rubber chicken and hear somebody speak that was going to put you to sleep, and you couldn't wait to get the hell out of there. I'd go to those dinners, man. That night couldn't last long enough. It was just so much fun. There were so many stories going around. And I know you mentioned that this is the 100-year centennial anniversary. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so like you said, this is the actual centennial. Negro Leagues was founded February 13th, 1920. And we're celebrating the centennial. And that's a great part of our history. It kind of is sad that a lot of things have been postponed due to COVID. Like all of our events have been postponed until next year, but we're still celebrating as much as we can. This weekend, August 16th, MLB will be celebrating the Negro Leagues. Every MLB team, coach, umpire, manager will have a patch on their sleeve. As you see, we have Josh Gibson Negro League Centennial T-shirts. Go to our website, support the foundation. But the most important thing is that
one after the show.
All right. The most important thing I like to talk about is that, you know, with everything going on in America right now, with African Americans and, you know, with this social injustice and this racism that's going on. And here we are talking about the Negro Leagues, 100 years anniversary, and the same things that African Americans are going through now, these same guys went through 100 years ago. Yeah. And I can best believe my great-grandfather never thought that his great-grandson would be going through the same things or some of the same things that he went through. And so that's where we're at right now with that. It's just that 100 years later, we're still struggling.
I hear you, Sean. And, you know, just to be able to keep telling this story, I think does a little bit of its part to continue to push for more equality. Now, I have a video clip here from President Obama wishing the Negro Leagues well from 100 years. I want to show that real quick.
Today, I'm tipping my hat to everybody in the Negro Leagues who left a century-long legacy of talent and spirit and dignity on our country. So here's to Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, Cool Papa Bell, and everybody else, including 3 brave women who did us all proud. There were some great team names too, like the Chicago American Giants. Couldn't think of a more fitting label for everyone who suited up. Congratulations, everybody.
Now, President Obama mentioned 3 women. Do you have any idea who he's referencing there?
Yeah, Toni Stone is one. Connie, I can think of Connie's last name off the top of my head, and Mamie Peanut Johnson. Those are the 3 women. Toni Stone was probably the more famous one. Mamie Peanut Johnson just died. She was actually at one of my galas. She was there when Luke Brock was there. So yeah, those are the 3 women, and they played for the Indianapolis Clowns. And there's no discredit to them; they were great talent. But the Indianapolis Clowns was kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters of the Negro Leagues. And so they played with that team. And yeah, 3 women. You know, Toni Stone was a second baseman. Connie played in the outfield, and Mamie Peanut Johnson was a pitcher. So those are the 3 women.
Sean, if there's a person alive to ask this question to, who's a young man like you are, who's had an opportunity to hang out with a lot of these legends. I know many of them have passed on that you got to know, and I think there's still a couple of them that are still around. Can you share with us maybe 2 of them that are your favorites, just because when you got to know them that they just put a smile on your face, and why?
Yeah, 2 come right off the top of my head. One is Bud Leonard. I was young. Bud Leonard, who was also in the Hall of Fame with Josh in 1972. From a small town, Rocky Mount, North Carolina. He was the first person that told me I look like Josh Gibson. I've never heard that before until he told me that. And then from the time he told me that, I've heard it several times. But he was a great guy. Of the time I met him, he was up in age, but he was a very well-known businessman in the Rocky Mount, North Carolina area. Has some great stories about Josh. I mean, everybody I've talked to had nothing but tremendous things to say about Josh. The other person was a guy named Double Duty Radcliffe, Ted Radcliffe. He called him Double Duty because one game he would pitch and one game he would catch. Now, Double Duty, he was different. He was a ladies' man, and he had a lot of things to say about Josh that we can't say on the air.
Yeah, right.
But he was very funny. He was a very funny guy. and he lived to 106 years old.
Wow.
So that tells you something right there. Yeah. Yeah.
We should all be so lucky. All right, we have a question from a viewer, Sean. Michael Eisen wants to know, were the games well received? Did they draw crowds? On average, how many fans might show up at a game?
Oh, yeah. I don't know the average, but if you look at some of the old black and white photos, the one thing that I like was not only was it crowded, you can see how they were dressed. I mean, we go to the game now with a polo shirt on and some shorts or jersey. I mean, they went to the games in their Sunday best. I mean, you see women with their Sunday dresses on, with their hats. You see guys in suits and ties. And so it was very well attended. I mean, all the games were very well attended. And the one thing about it was Josh and Satch, even though they had their contract, they also got gate money as well because they were a draw.
Right.
So they will also get gate money based on when they went to different cities. They got gate money too. So it was very well attended.
And I imagine that was part of the recruiting effort to bring them to different teams because these guys switched teams an awful lot back then.
Yeah, they did. I mean, Josh stayed with the Grays and the Crawfords. But, yeah, like you said, Satchel was with Pittsburgh, with the Monarchs. He was known for. But some of the guys that, didn't have that much of a great career, they kind of moved around a lot. But with the Negro Leagues, though, it was called never drop the ball. So they played in the Latin country. Josh played in Venezuela. He played in Puerto Rico. He played in Mexico. We have his Mexico. He's in the Hall of Fame in Mexico. I have his 1941-42 MVP trophy from Puerto Rico. So these guys played baseball all year round.
Now, didn't Josh, correct me if I'm wrong here, because I have a Clemente jersey from his time at Santuce, and didn't Josh manage there after his career?
Yes, he did. He played there and he managed with the Crapper. He did, yes.
Yes. All right.
Yes, he did. So you did your research, Doc. I see that.
Listen, it's right here, man. Come on. All right, so I want to show a clip here, Sean, of the movie trailer from 1976. Bingo Long, Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings. Now, this is Hollywood's version of the Negro Leagues. Keep in mind, this is America in 1976 putting together a version of the Negro Leagues in the 1930s. I want to show the clip, and then I have a couple questions for you, Josh, about it.
1930s, to play ball in the major leagues, you had to be white. To play in the Negro League, you had to be great. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Bingo Long and the greatest congregation of athletic talent ever assembled in one place at one time for one purpose.
Play ball! They say you're a pretty fair hitter. So they says. Well, hit this.
Billy D. Williams is Bingo Long. James Earl Jones is Leon Carter.
Ball players gotta overthrow the owners and run the teams their own selves.
You think we can do that?
Do what?
Overthrow the owner.
Sure. Same day we turned white.
Richard Pryor is Charlie Snow.
From now on, I'm going to be known as Carlos Navarro. I'm going to break into the majors as a Cuban.
He can hit, he can run, he can score.
Buenas noches, senora. Can I buy you a drink?
The Bingo Long, Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings.
What you going to do about this mess, Sally Potter? It's your picture what's leading this band of detergents.
Your All-Stars against mine. One big game down in St. Louis.
Barnstorming in the 1930s. It was daring.
Just drop me off at the baseball park.
It was demoralizing.
Come on, this wonderful lady.
It was downright dangerous.
You gentlemen checking out?
Who would have thought it could be so much fun?
Wow!
Now we got to ruin that team before they're gonna ruin us.
Bingo Long, Traveling All-Stars, and Motor Kings.
Now you're talking Billy D. Williams, James Earl Jones, Richard Pryor. I mean, it didn't get any bigger than that. And you know, one thing I know about the Negro Leagues is they play ball with a certain style and showmanship. There was no doubt about it. I think part of that had to do with the fact that they had to sell tickets, right? They barnstormed, went into different places, and there's an element of showmanship to it. But I kind of also get the sense that there was an element about that movie that maybe would rub some people the wrong way. What are your thoughts about that, Sean?
Well, yeah, I mean, the way they portrayed it was they were like showmen instead of baseball players. You know what I mean? They didn't take it really serious enough. But it was a great movie. Like you mentioned, some of the legendary actors in that movie. But when I looked at that movie, and again, that was in '76, so I was about 8 years old. So, but it just seemed like it kind of reminded me of the Indianapolis Clowns. Remember, I was telling you they're more like the Harlem Globetrotters.
Right.
So it was more of showmanship type of game. Now, don't get me wrong, there was some of that going on, but these guys had talent. You know what I mean? These guys had talent. And so, I mean, whenever you have a movie, we understand movies are made to draw people in. They want to see something that's kind of funny or interesting and things like that. So, as you mentioned, that movie was done in 1976, a long time ago. And, you know, some great actors in that movie.
Right. I get the sense that if that movie was made today, it would be a very different movie than it was then.
Oh, for sure.
All right,
sure.
Sean, I know, Sean, that there is a push to get Major League Baseball's MVP award named after Josh Gibson. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so everybody knows. So right now, Kennesaw Landis' name is actually on the MVP trophy. And for the viewers who are listening, Kennesaw Landis was the commissioner at the time who denied black players into the majors. So there's been a big push to since all this been going on with this social justice been going on, there's been a big push from some former MLB players and former MLB MVP recipients to remove his name off that trophy, off that award, I should say. And the three names that are mentioning is Branch Rickey, who we all know signed Jackie Robinson, Frank Robinson, who was the MVP in both the American and National League, and the first black manager, then of Josh Gibson. So tomorrow, the viewers can read an ESPN Undefeated article that I submitted, an essay from my words and my family, talking about why we feel Josh is the right candidate to replace Landis. And it's kind of a poetic justice type. It's more of like, you know, how ironic would it be for one of the players who were denied the opportunity to play in the majors to replace the same person who denied these guys. So check it out tomorrow. It'll be on ESPN Undefeated online.
Sean, if you could maybe shoot me that link, I will make sure it is in the comments section of this very show that will live on the internet in perpetuity. Hey, we got a question for you from Eric Johnson. And Eric wants to know, what about when the Negro League All-Stars played against the Major League players in exhibition games?
Yeah, that was barnstorming. So Dizzy Dean had his team. Dizzy Dean had his team, the All-Stars, and Satchel Paige All-Stars. And they were barnstormed pretty often. And, you know, majority of the time, the Negro League baseball players will beat the Major League Baseball All-Stars. So, you know, I think, you know, even though Kennesaw Landis is not integrate baseball, as we all know, talent is talent. And no matter if you're black, white, Asian, or Hispanic, you want to play against the best. And I felt that Dizzy Dean knew that playing against Satchel Paige All-Stars will have a good, you know, it would be good competition to see how good Major League Baseball players really are.
Now, I know there's a lot of guys that have played Major League Baseball, maybe some that still are, that help out the foundation and some of the things that you've done. Kevin Connolly wants to know about Barry Bonds specifically. Has he helped out at all and anything to further the cause of the Negro Leagues, Sean?
Yeah, you know, I'm going to say this, and I know a lot of people I don't say don't like Barry or have their own opinion about Barry, but Barry's a great guy. Barry came to Pittsburgh for our gala in 2015. And when he came, that was his second time back to Pittsburgh. The first time he came back was to give Andrew McCutchen his MVP trophy. And he came back for our gala. And what I would say this, he was A1 class. He raised a lot of money for us, number one. We auctioned off his jerseys, made a lot of money. And the one thing I would say about Barry was some of our guests usually leave right after the event. Now, he didn't stay the whole time, but he hung around and signed autographs. The one thing I will say is that there's two stories I want to say about Barry. So we all know about the famous argument between Barry Bonds and Jim Leland, right? The argument at spring training, right? So we wanted to show the clip at the gala. So Barry wanted to get something. He's in the car. And so I was feeling more comfortable. He was telling me a lot of stories about Pittsburgh when he was here. So I said, hey, Barry, you know what? We would like to play the clip of you and Jimmy in spring training. So he was like, for what? So I was like, oh, man. So he's like, for what? I said, well, we just thought it'd be something to show, you back in Pittsburgh, So by the time we get back to the hotel, he says, well, go ahead and show it. Go ahead and show it. So we show it. Now, we bleeped out all the cuss words. And I'm going to tell you this. He got up on that podium to give his speech. Before he gave his speech, he apologized to Jim Leland. He said, Skip, I was wrong. You're the skipper. I'm the player. I'm going to apologize. And you would have thought a pin dropped in that room when he apologized. It was so phenomenal that he done that. And so it was great for us. And the other thing was the media was there. Of course, all the media was there. And so they came to me and they said, can we interview Barry? So I don't know. So I asked Barry and I said, hey, man, the media's here. They want to interview you. He said, I'm not here for the media. I'm here for you. Right, so right. I said, well, that's fine with me.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame that first story you told hasn't really gotten out because Barry's name in this town is not nearly as good as Sean Gibson's name in this town. All right. So, Sean, I am a big fan of the aesthetic in sports. I love the color, the pageantry. For a guy who's almost 97 years old, I shouldn't be into uniforms as much as I am. But I just love that stuff. There was a time when I was younger, I had a hat collection. I had damn near 300 hats. And without a doubt, the Negro League baseball uniforms were the best of the best. But so were the hats, and I had a lot of them. I want to show a couple of my favorites, and I want to get your take on a couple of these. Of course, we have the Crawfords, and the Crawfords, they had a number of hats, right? They had white hats, red hats, pinstripes, no pinstripes, and I think the Grays kind of also had a similar deal with some piping. They didn't have nearly as much piping as the Crawfords did. But one of the first ones I want to get your opinion on is the Baltimore Black Sox, because, I'm a big fan of the circle there. We're going to get into my favorite one that also has a circle here in a little bit. But the Baltimore Black Sox, I find it interesting that they kind of have Baltimore Orioles colors, and there's like I don't know if that's a kinship to the city or what that is. What do you think about that hat?
That's okay. I like the first two.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Of course.
No, I mean, listen, they're all great hats, man. The thing about the thing about the Negro Leagues, that's the uniqueness of it. They all had their own unique style, own unique flavor. They're all great hats, and especially the uniforms. I get calls all the time about the jerseys. Not too much about the hats. Everybody wants the jerseys.
Well, this is the KC Marnox that, of course, Satchel made famous. I had this hat. I thought that was a legendary hat. One of the hats I really liked because it really makes a statement is the New York Black Yankees. And what I like about it is it's close enough to the Yankees, but it's a little bit of a bolder New York. And listen, the New York Yankees didn't have the copyright on the New York logo, right? And the New York Black Yankees had this, and it was similar but different. You had mentioned the Chicago American Giants, as did President Barack Obama. If I'm not mistaken, they were the first professional Negro League team.
Yeah, that's for Rube Foster. Yes. So the founder of the Negro Leagues, Rube Foster, was a pitcher. So that was the first team, and that was the first of 8. It was 8 original teams that started the Negro Leagues. But Rube Foster, who founded the Negro Leagues in 1920, pitch for the Chicago American Giants.
All right. And then you have the Cleveland Buckeyes. Now, let me just say this. From an aesthetic perspective, I like the look of the hat. It's unique. It's kind of got a little bit of a Seattle Pilots look to it, different color before the Seattle Pilots were even born. Of course, I got to give Cleveland the business a little bit. They couldn't come up with anything more original than the Buckeyes. You got Ohio State. But I guess in fairness, the Pittsburgh Steelers were called the Pirates in their first year, and way before the Penguins, Pittsburgh had an NHL team back in the 1920s, and they were also called the Pirates, so we're just as guilty of that nonsense. Here's the Philadelphia Stars. That's an iconic P. But this has to be my favorite Negro League hat here, the Birmingham
Black Barons. Yeah, that's nice.
That's just an absolutely awesome hat. All right, Sean, where can our viewers find your foundation, find you online, help in the community? How can they get involved?
Yeah, so they can go to our website, which is www.joshgibson.org. Our social media page, Facebook, we have Josh Gibson Foundation. Our Twitter is Josh Gibson _1911. And Instagram is Josh Gibson Foundation as well. So they can find all that stuff that we're doing with our kids throughout the foundation. And also get updated on events, especially for our centennial events for next year.
Sean, when we're allowed to do things normally, like go out and have a beer with each other, I would love to go out and buy you a beer, my man, and catch up. It's been a while since I did run into you last year when we saw our man Harlan, but I haven't really had a chance to sit down and hang out with you at all. Hey, listen, I'm going to remove you from the stream. Don't go anywhere. I want to chat with you when the show's over, but I got a couple housekeeping items here, so hang on with me for a couple minutes, okay?
All right. Yep.
My man. All right, man, what a tremendous guest Sean Gibson is, and just a treasure trove of information, and his great-grandfather, the legendary Josh Gibson. All right, I just want to give a quick plug for what I got going on here next week. Next Wednesday night, COVID in the classroom, school in the age of COVID-19. We have got Pittsburgh Public School principal, Miss Pam Parks, one of my favorite people, recent Taylor Alderdice graduate, superstar headed to the University of Maryland, Lauren Hafner, and just about the cutest kid in the entire world. He's going to be a fourth grader. My man, Cash Holtzman. We're going to have our first panel discussion with the three of them next Wednesday night on what school will look like in the age of COVID. Listen, this show tonight has been super fun. Our guest was great. There's more where that came from. Thanks for tuning in. You guys have been great. Peace.